The formal inquest into the death of Jay Slater opened yesterday at Preston Crown Court. I put on hold my podcast because I felt it right that the formal police process should be allowed to conclude, and as such, I've kept quiet on all the evidence that I have. But hearing how disappointing the inquest was yesterday, I've decided to speak out on a number of points. At the time, in Tenerife, I undertook a detailed assessment and brief investigation. I was given access to the family and traced and spoke to key witnesses who were with Jay during his holiday, and in particular on the evening and on the morning of when he was last seen. I've interviewed all the key witnesses except one person. All interviews were recorded and I still have them, and all the evidence and documentation and pictures that I collected at the time I still have. First, my thoughts remain with Debbie and the family, especially as this time when they have told how poor the police investigation has been. As a family of a loved one who has died requiring a police investigation, all they want to know is that that investigation has been thorough, has spoken to all the witnesses, been detailed, and crucially, they have retained and collected all key evidence that relates to that investigation. The evidence now about the watch and the knives that I first reported about, but heavily criticised on, has been shown to be true and is confirmed as being accurate and evidentially supported. I can confirm that although Jay was pictured with two knives in his waist when he stood on the steps of that rental, the knives, as I'm told, were not found with him, and crucially, the knives, I'm told, were still in that apartment. So they didn't leave that property when he left. I note the police have been unable to find Lucy Law to attend the hearing. I have many recordings and conversations with Lucy, who fully cooperated right from the very beginning and helped me piece together the events of that evening and of the morning when Jay left. But the most important witness the police have also been unable to trace is Ayub Qasim and Steve Rokas. I never spoke to Rokas, but I did track down Ayub and had a number of detailed conversations with him, all of them recorded. I put to him many questions and he answered them. I also have other information about him. I also have WhatsApp conversations with him. And it's from Ayub that I have some very crucial evidence that has not yet been made public and does provide, I believe, greater context as to why Jay left that property on that morning and took the decision to walk. And to add to the questionable quality of the police investigation, one important image relating to the watch being stolen apparently has now been deleted by the police. I've kept every image relating to both the watch and the knives and other series of communication. Debbie was asked yesterday, was she happy for the statements of Ayub and Rokas to be read out? And she said, no, I want them to attend court. Quite rightly so. I think it's fair to say that after yesterday's hearing, the family will feel disappointed and certainly does not leave one with the view that the police investigation has been both thorough and meticulous. At the time, I offered all my evidence to the Spanish police, but they never responded. And I remain happy to share everything I have with them. Equally, I'm happy to share all my information with Lancashire police, although obviously this was a Spanish police-led investigation, not a British. My thoughts remain with Jay's family. Whilst I took a great deal of criticism throughout my coverage of the case, looking back, it's clear now that the evidence come out of court, and in particular with regards to pathologists, that sadly it was a tragic accident. There was no third party involvement, which I was very clear to make an assessment on in the very early days. So a tragic accident, and my thoughts remain with Jay and his family. There are certain cases which attract huge media attention. Madeleine McCann, Nicola Bulley and Jay Slater. Many of you will have watched some of the coverage that I have in relation to Jay Slater, and indeed the video that I put up yesterday. I was very clear in that video where I said that I had shared my information with the Spanish authorities. I've been in communication with them, but they hadn't come back to me. And that's exactly the point, is that I sent the information I had in an email to the Spanish authorities. I told them I wasn't able to share with them the audio recording at this point because I needed to explain to them how I had obtained it. And also I was very conscious that it was highly sensitive and I didn't want it just being shared all around. They've never come back to me. And that is the point in relation to this, is that I have been really open, and all of my investigation, it's about working with the authorities. It's more difficult when it's abroad because Spain and France and Portugal, they have this situation where they really don't like working with the public to get information. They think they always know the answers. The British police are very different. Very good relationship with British police forces. When I do investigations on cases here, more often than not, they work with me. I share information with them. They share information with me when it's appropriate. And so there's a much different relationship, unfortunately, abroad. Many forces abroad, it's quite difficult. That said, there are some really good countries. I've done an investigation in Thailand and Cambodia, and they worked really, really closely with me. Being an ex-detective, shared a lot of information that enabled us, in one case where we were able to track down some child traffickers and we got them arrested. That worked really well in Cambodia. And in Thailand and indeed in India, I did an investigation where the Indian authorities were brilliant. The Indian police were absolutely brilliant. They shared all of the documentation they had, which enabled me to get to who I was convinced was the killer and do an interview with him. And so it does work really well. But for those that are criticising me, saying, why haven't you handed the information to police? I have told them exactly what I've got. I just haven't shared the audio recordings with them because of the sensitive nature of them. And it needs to be explained properly. And I need to deal with the continuity of evidence as well. I can't just be sharing information which could potentially be really important. There are discussions on there which are about criminal offences. And therefore it's really important that if that information is shared, it's done in the correct way, evidentially wise. So moving forward, I will continue to do the work that I do. I think it's really important. People criticising, saying, what have you ever solved? Well, I solve cases all the time. You see some of the high profile ones, really some of the perhaps the really difficult ones to solve. But in my line of work that I do, I investigate cases every day. I am solving a lot of cases, a lot of information that's come to me I share with other police forces. So it can be a thankless task because of course everybody out there now thinks that they are an investigator, they are a reporter. Social media now has created a completely new world where everyone has a mobile phone, they can go out and record. The quality now is really good. And of course, the internet has so much information. Someone will put a piece of information out there, someone else reads it, and it becomes fact for them. So much inaccurate information. And don't forget, so many people sit at home and think they know the answer. I haven't been in a position where I've spoken to friends, family, been to the scene, and obviously have an experienced background in policing. No, they're sat at home and they think they're the answer because they've read something online or they've got an opinion in their head. Everyone's entitled to opinion. I think it's really important people engage and involve themselves, but you've also got to be very sensible about this because actually, when you're sat at home and you've got no experience and you're literally just reading stuff online and that's created your opinion. It is an opinion. It's not an evidentially based opinion, which is of course what I do when I go to the scene and I do that. So I'm sure the Jay Slater case will rumble on. It will be because there's obviously still a lot more information to come out. And when the time is right, I think it's really important. If the police haven't got to a position where all that evidence is out there, then I think it's really important that people know the full picture. It's one of those stories that has become a public story, which is often the case when people go missing and it hits the headlines, because 99% of the cases don't hit the headlines. But when it does hit the headlines, it's interesting because that person kind of becomes a public commodity. The public think they have a right to know everything about what's happened. And I always have a very clear process is that if I get involved in those cases, it's really important the family know exactly. And with the family, you agree how you're going to work the way through that, and with the authorities, how you're going to work your way through that. But ultimately, for me, it's about the right information being out there. If the wrong information's out there, we need to correct that. But also, my job as an investigative reporter is to hold people to account. And if the authorities aren't doing the job properly, whatever that is, or whether the organisation's not doing it properly, then it's important as investigative reporters we hold them to account. It's not for me to do their job for them. That's for them to do. If I feel that there is wrongdoing, if I feel that there's information that is really important that should be out there, or if it's likely to make a difference to a case and they haven't done the investigation properly, as an investigative reporter, it's important for me to put that out there. Just look at Savile. If I hadn't taken the steps that I had in order to build up all of that evidence and put it out there, would it have led to a national inquiry? Would it have led to all those other people being arrested? Would it have led to changes in policies? No, because if we hadn't have done that programme that created the huge momentum that it did, then changes wouldn't have occurred. So investigative reporters have a really important role to play, and the media does in the UK. The role of the media is to hold people to account, and we have to keep doing that.